Shalom and welcome to this week's Living Torah as we continue on in the book of Bereshit, Genesis, and we read about these patriarchs, our forefathers, and eventually our foremothers, which we did have foremothers, and that's why there's a dysfunctional family. But that's a story that we'll get to in coming weeks. As many of you know, Kathy and I went out to Colorado. Was that just a week ago? Yeah, and interesting, amazing it is that as we went out there, we had this trip booked. The week prior to was airline delays. The week after, airline delays. And we got that 1 week in the middle that didn't have any, thankfully. So I was going over to the hotel to check in and took our grandson, our oldest grandson, and used it as a few minutes. We don't get a lot of time with some of our grandchildren, so use that as a little, teaching time. See what we could do. Little grandpa sort of stuff that you should be doing, teaching your children, your grandchildren. And so I said to him, so what's your favorite subject in school? And he said math. And I said, you know what my favorite one was? Well, he made, a couple of guesses, a few guesses, none of them being right based upon the line of thought that I was wanting to lead us in, which of course he didn't know that. But finally he kind of gave up. And I said, I didn't really have a favorite subject, but there is a subject that I wish that I would have paid more attention in. And so I tried to get him to guess that one again. He didn't, based upon where I was wanting the conversation to go to. So I finally said history. And he was kind of, quiet for a moment. And I said, do you know why? He said, I have no idea. I said, well, I wish I'd have paid more attention, because history is about people who embraced their calling in life. It's about people that acted upon their calling in life. And I said, how many people made the history books that did nothing in life? And he said, well, probably none. I said, yeah, you're pretty much right. Not many people that did nothing in life make the history books about life. And so I used that as a little bit of a teaching moment to throw a few things out there. And that leads us to this week's Torah portion, which is Toldot, or the history. This is the history of Isaac, or Isaac, Abraham's son. And it says Abraham fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rivkah, the daughter of Bethuel, going on from there, the sister of Laban, for his wife. And of course, we know what happens. It's just kind of this thing. It's like the Almighty, from the beginning, said, I'm going to have some themes that are going to go through life, and I'm not going to make life easy for these people. Has anyone ever thought, why couldn't life be easy? Yeah, I have. You build something and you measure a board out, and what happens? Have you ever, those of you that have built something, whatever it is, I have a deck I've got to redo the boards on pretty soon, so I'm thinking about that. How many times do you cut the board too long? Really? No. You normally cut it too short. And it's, it'd be easy to take a board that, wow, I missed that measurement by an inch. I cut the board an inch too long. Well, I'll put back on the sawhorse, so I just cut an inch off. No. What do? You cut it an inch too short. And it's not real easy to put the inch back onto the board, is it? So life is not designed to be easy. As much as we all, I think all of us, would like it to be. Why? I'm going to make a statement regarding that toward the end. But before we get there, let's look at one of those areas of life that the Father has, in order for life to kind of be challenging, He's is woven some things into it to provide those challenges. And here we have in the life of Isaac, his wife, who is barren. Well, go back, to Sarah. What do we have with Sarah's life? She's barren. What do we have with Rivka's life? She's barren. What are we going to have with Raquel's life? She's barren. We could go on and on through numerous ones, and excuse me. So what is barrenness? Why is this barrenness thing a theme of their lives, the patriarchs' lives, and a theme for many of our lives? It's because barrenness produces a crossroad in life. Barrenness brings you to a place of having to make a decision. Of here is the promise, something in life that you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you have been promised by the Creator Himself. You've been given dreams and visions and words and just inner desire and all of those things that are propelling you toward this end result. But then you come to this place and it's like, there's no way this could happen. I must have been deceived. Something's wrong. I didn't hear right. Yada, yada, yada. And so the crossroad is this: giving up or moving forward. Now, the interesting thing about the crossroad is that with a crossroad, you come to a place like a Y or a T in the road, and if you take the right direction, you end up going toward your destination. Well, in life in general, we consider that if you took the other way, take take the left Y instead of the right Y, that you'd go somewhere. Well, that may be true. If you're driving a car or taking a hike, you're going to end up somewhere. But in life, as we walk it out, if you don't push through that crossroad, you end up just doing nothing. You end up just stopping in life. Never achieve. There's not, this idea that somehow the Father has plan A and plan B in our lives, and if we don't somehow, push through to plan A, well, there's always plan B. I just don't see that. It sounds good on paper, but when you line up that paper with this paper, there's really no plan B for life, is there? So for Isaac with Rebekah, after a time, Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rivkah. It takes him a little while maybe, but he figures out that, my wife is kind of following in the footsteps of Mama here. And, I'm 40. She's probably somewhere in her late 30s. Are we going to have to pull this thing off again? Which is going to be like over 40 years from now, we're finally going to see the promise? Well, he does something. It says, he began to pray. Isaac prayed to Yah on behalf of his wife because she was childless. Okay. He prayed on behalf of his wife. Why isn't he praying on his behalf? Why is he not praying on behalf of the covenant? It seems like it would say he prayed because of the promise of the covenant, and his wife became pregnant and bore a child or children. But instead, he prayed on behalf of his wife, actually putting her in a place higher than the covenant. He maybe he saw the emptiness. Maybe that it was that emptiness that drove him to pray. Was it that he had kind of forgotten about the covenant? All these things are things that we could insert into the text, not really understanding, because it's so easy for me, for you, to read through it. I can read through this Torah portion in fairly slow, in about 5, even slower, about 10 minutes. You can speed read it in a couple. But these are lives of people that had to walk out things, and to run through it so fast that we don't stop. And though we may not get it right, I use the word speculate a lot when I'm going through these Torah portions, because what are we doing? We are speculating, but speculating, the idea of us speculating on what is going on in their lives is actually built into the text for our benefit, so that we'll spend some time actually thinking through what was going on in these people's lives, which in turn may help us in thinking through our lives. Well, in the end, it doesn't really matter, what he is praying about. What is he doing? He's fighting for the covenant. He is fighting for the covenant that was given not just to Abraham, his father, but was given to Adam. He's fighting for that. And let us not be turned or blown about in these days. Let us understand something that is absolutely 100% true from the beginning of time until and through the kingdom being established on this earth. This one statement will help you in watching the news, in listening to podcasts, in things that you're studying, in things that you're living. And it doesn't matter. I mean, as I'm recording, this is Tuesday morning, there's a major election going on in Virginia. We'll see how that thing turns out. There's the climate, whatever, with Biden sleeping through it over in Glasgow, Scotland. There's all these things that are going on. Can we boil life down to something? Though life today is, as I kind of brought out last week, it's extremely complicated, but in the end, it's extremely simple. That there's one thing, and one thing only, that is driving everything that you see today in life. And that is revealed to us, once again, not for the first time, but it's revealed to us once again in the beginning of this Torah portion. Something that we go back and we see with Cain and Abel. We see it with Isaac and Ishmael. It is now brought out once again with Jacob and Esau. Will be taken over into the life of Yosef in just a couple of short Torah portions from now. And that is, you're waiting for it, right? You're waiting for the statement. Everything that's happening today, everything that has happened, and everything that will happen is about one word: covenant. It's no more difficult. It's no more complicated than that. Is that there is a fight today over the covenant, which comes down to this: is the Elohim, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is his word true or not? Whether you can go to religion, go to replacement theology, go to all these things, it comes down to this one idea: is his word true? Okay, now with that, let's kind of move on through this. The children fought with each other inside her so much that she said, if it's going to be like this, why go on living? Now, let me ask you a very pointed question that I think is extremely relevant for the day that we're living in. Has anyone in the last, let's say, 18 months or so, have you made a statement similar to this? If life is going to be like this, why? Why go on living? Okay, how many hands can I get? Okay, yeah, I've had that same thought, probably had those same words. Why go through all this stuff? I mean, here we've got the new normal, and the newer normal, and the newest normal, and I don't like any of them. Okay, I don't like any of the new normals that I've seen, and I would imagine that the newest is probably going to be about the same as the one that was, and it's like there's absolutely nothing about this. It's like, why go and live? If the fight is going to be like this, okay, and I mean this gets really close to where I live. If the fight's going to be like this, you just go ahead and bring the kingdom now. Yeah. If the fight inside of me, as Rebecca is saying, if the fight's going to be like this, then why in the world do I have to go through all of this? Why can't I just get to the end of it and it all be over and you know, move forward? And here we got the establishment of everything. Yeah, this theme that you and I are going through today is the same theme that has been from the beginning and is going to be all the way. Have you ever asked yourself the question in reading through the book of Revelation, looking through the different prophets and prophecies and all that is in the scripture? Have you ever asked your question, why do we got to go through this thing? Why do we have to go through all of this? Look at the book of Revelation. Okay, all the, you got the bowls and the trumpets and all these things that are happening, and you got the locust stuff, and I mean, it's really, really bad. Except for when you go back and remind yourself of the title of the book. Okay, get your Bible out, turn to that page, which is the Revelation chapter 1, and it does not say the revelation of the end times. It says the revelation of Messiah Yeshua. All that's going on, whether it be these two boys fighting in a womb, or the fighting over who brought the best sacrifice with Cain and Abel, or the fighting over the 12 boys, which would be the 12 tribes. Everything is about the covenant being established. If we can focus on that one thing, then all of life will in the end, I know it sounds oversimplified. I got that. That it's all about one word. I got that. But what keeps me sane in the middle of it all is this: that his covenant's being established. And so, why the fighting in the womb? Because this is what it takes. The fighting of Jacob and Esau in the womb was a necessary event for the covenant to be established and the kingdom to be manifested upon this earth. What is going on today? Whether it be an election in Virginia or a volcano in, off of the coast of Spain or wherever it is, or 12 feet of snow in Alaska, which is happening. That's crazy. I lived up there. I cannot imagine that. That's as high as your house. I mean, forget shoveling that. No matter what it is, all of these events are happening. I just thought about it. Isn't it interesting that they're over in Glasgow right now talking about climate change, which used to be global warming. But once again, I mean, if you look back at the track record, Al Gore would go somewhere to talk about global warming, and all of a sudden it would be a snowstorm or something. Once again, the Almighty makes fools of these people, which is probably one of his easiest jobs. Now, moving on. We see that Esau, after they begin to grow up, Isaac was 60 years old when Rivkah bore these two children. So time has gone on. The stories of the covenant are being passed on. All right, how many times do you think that Isaac told Jacob and Esau about going to Mount Moriah? Do you think he took them to Mount Moriah? Do you think he took them to the exact spot on Mount Moriah? He told them about the events. All right, I mean, this was the story of the day. Sitting down with these boys around a campfire somewhere. They know that eventually Abba, their dad, is going to start telling them the story about. And then we're going to plan another trip and another Passover, and we're going to go to the same mountain. And so these boys are familiar totally and completely. They can tell this story by now in their dad's voice. It's been given to them so many times. But here's the difference, is that Esau, it didn't affect him. He heard the story, but it was just the acknowledgement of audible vibrations in the air. It went into his ears, he heard it, but he never heard it. On the other hand, Isaac hears it and acts upon it. The difference between a believer and a follower. Okay, Esau heard the story, believed it, okay, but Isaac is the one that acted upon it. Why is Jacob cooking? Now, one of the other stories we were talking about me and Kathy were with our grandson, and we were talking again about school, because he's really into school. So Kathy was talking about how back in, and happy belated birthday to my wife, back in the days that we were in school, the guys normally went to power mechanics class. It was very unique to see a girl there, though I remember in third grade power mechanics class, we did have a girl there, and it was like, what is she doing here? Because that's how it was in the 60s. Okay, I know things changed. I got it. She said, but and the girls went to home ec, and you were taught to cook and all these things, and that's just the way it was. And our grandson was kind of questioning that. We said, well, in that day, there were kind of different roles. We didn't have time to go in and explain the whole thing, but back in the 50s and 60s, there were roles. that different people played. Today, there's once again a talk in Congress of reinstituting the draft, or at least having to, I guess, to sign up for, and maybe some. I haven't looked totally at the story, but now well, should women be a part of that draft? And this is not chauvinistic, and it's just that it has been established through the years that the draft would not affect women, and I'm sure there would be women that would say, yes, we need to do this, and that's beyond the point. But in that day, you don't read about men cooking. When the three messengers come to Abraham's tent, what happens? Okay, Abram says to Sarah, he gets credit for it, but she did the work. She was the one that put it all together there, because you had different roles. Well, here we have Jacob is cooking. Is this because he's kind of as it's been taught through the years, kind of the sissy boy? I don't see him as that. He was a woman, he was a man that was concerned about the covenant. And when a person is concerned about the covenant, they're more concerned about their home. Now, think through that one for a moment. A person that's concerned about the covenant shows more concern about their home than they do about their job. Now, there is much more to what I just said. Many people would just kind of run through that one and not get a hold of it. That's a statement that is worth writing down and going back to and thinking about. A person that is concerned about the covenant will be more concerned about their home. I didn't say their house, I said their home. Because a person that is covenant-minded is family-minded. Because they understand that without the family going forth, the covenant does not go forth. Where Esau, on the other hand, was more job-oriented. There's a lot more behind what I'm saying here than I have time on this program to go to. Esau, we see, is out doing his job at the expense of the home. Jacob, on the other hand, is tending to the things of the home at the expense of his job. Because when given the choice of which one he's going to focus on, it's going to be the home. So what do we see? We see him cooking. Is it that his wife was, taking a day off? Was it her birthday and he said, I'll cook you? No, it's not what it is. Because this is about a specific meal. A meal that is thought to be, this red stew, is thought to be a meal that was done in commemoration of the death of Abraham. Today we would see the sitting of Shiva, the memorial of each year of a person's passing. Something is done in memory of them, whether just going to their grave or whatever it is. But this is about the commemoration of the death of Abraham, is the traditional thinking and teaching on this. To commemorate the death of Abraham, though, as in last week's Torah portion, is to commemorate the life of Abraham. To go to a person's grave is not the celebration of their death. It is, or the commemoration of their death. It is a commemoration of their life. I've gone numerous times to my grandmother's grave in Sopchoppy, Florida. Every time I go there, I glance at the dates. Date of her birth, date of her death. I glance at those and I contemplate what was between them. Glancing at the dates and contemplating the dash, because the dash is about the person's life. So in this making of the stew, Jacob, I get these guys confused all the time. Yaakov, Jacob, it's one thing to know it, when we were just doing the English, now you got the Hebrew. The two girls, Rebecca and Rachel, those, I got to think through those every time. But here's Jacob is commemorating the life of Abraham through cooking this stew. Esau comes in and is totally instant gratification. He doesn't even ask why you're cooking. Why are you, Jacob? I only saw you cooking last year, and here you are again. Oh, wait a minute! It doesn't even cross his mind, because this boy is absolutely 100% instant gratification, the same as people are today. You want a scripture to read through and to see where we are? Go to 2 Timothy chapter 3 and start reading there. Okay, it talks about the last days, which is pretty similar to what Esau's life was. No, so it goes on from there, and goes down into chapter 26. We see the famine. We see that Isaac is gonna walk out those same footsteps of his father. He's stopped. The famine doesn't affect him. Okay, there's a famine around him, but the famine doesn't affect him. There's a lot to be said right there. That today, a lot of people are talking about famine around us. Well, I'm not afraid of the famine, because I understand the concepts of abundance within famine. And this is what Isaac had. He planted crops in that land and reaped that year 100 times as much as he had sown, because Yah blessed him. Okay, when we're walking in the promises, when we're walking in the covenant, when we're walking in obedience, all right, it goes back to Abraham. He did what he said. He followed my mitzvot, my regulations, and my Torah. Abraham followed the Torah before the Torah was given to Moshe on Mount Sinai. And because of that, his descendants were blessed also. That's one of the greatest inheritances that you can give to your children and your grandchildren is an obedient life today. We don't understand how much of a gift it is to future generations for us to be obedient today. We may not see all of the blessings. We may not see all the provision that comes from it, but you and I walking in obedience today is sowing seeds of blessings for future generations. Now, as the famine was, there will also be a problem with water. There were wells that Abraham had dug through his time in the land. And the Philistines, this is the stupidity, the Philistines had stopped up the wells. Now, think about this for a moment. You have a well, you're in the wilderness, in the desert, and you need water. You got about 3 days without water, and you become part of the desert. Dry bones, and the rest is history that no one will ever read. So the Philistines see these wells that Abraham dug, and the very fact that Abraham dug them means that maybe he has some ownership of the land. And we have to disapprove and disprove that he had any ownership in the land, so we're going to take the wells and stop them up. Instead of, they could have drank of the blessings of Abraham, the same as those in the Middle East today, the Palestinians, so-called Palestinians, the Arabs that are in the land today could be drinking of the blessings of the covenant of Abraham, but what are they doing? Stopping up the wells. See, every move that they make in building an illegal settlement, and it is the Palestinians, Arabs, that are building illegal settlements in the land, the Bedouins, who are now siding with the Palestinian Arabs, are building illegal settlements. They are stopping up. When they say that you cannot go and pray in Hebron because of the riots that will be ensued from that, what is that? That's stopping up a well. When those in modern-day Nablus, Shechem, when they riot over the fact that Jews want to come to the tomb of Joseph and pray, that's stopping up a well. Do we even need to go to the Harabayit, the Temple Mount? The very fact that Jews are not allowed to pray on the Temple Mount, what is that? That's stopping up the wells, stopping up the blessings. What blessings could the Philistines have walked in if they hadn't have stopped up the wells? What blessings could the Arabs be living in today if they quit stopping up the wells? Because it's about covenant, okay? And it's a fight about covenant. So we see him going through and unstopping the wells, and every time there's quarreling. You know, he unstops this one, and people quarrel about it. Then he unstops another, and they quarrel about it. He unstops another one to the fact that there was, you know, there's plenty of water. Dug another well and quarreled over that one too. And he called it enmity. This is verse 21. He went away from there and dug another well, and over that one they didn't quarrel. So he called it wide open spaces. What are we doing today? This is a fascinating picture. That the complete Tanakh is about the opening of wells. The Gospels is about the opening of wells. Yeshua, the living water. When we look at the book of Acts, it's about the opening of wells. Spiritual wells. What happened at the time of Marcion? He stopped up the well. The Torah is done away with. You don't need all those words over there. Most of the Gospels, okay? When you say the Torah is done away with, what are you doing? You're stopping up the wells. Because you can't get the living water of the true Messiah that comes from the well of the Torah. So what is this time period that we've been living out in history about? It's about us unstopping the wells. And recent years have been about people quarreling over the water that came out of the well. Well, that's the wrong calendar well. And that's the wrong name well. And that's this well and that well. Well, you know what you got to keep doing? Keep uncovering wells. Keep unstopping them. Keep moving forward until you find that well of such an abundance of living water that people lose their desire to quarrel. That's where I believe that's kind of where we're at today in our lives. Now, I'll go on, and it says Esau grew old, his eyes were dimmed. He brings in Esau, and we know all of these different, the characters and everything. But it's about, there's a lesson to be learned here in this story of Esau and Jacob, and that is a word that I go back to over and over in our day. It's a word that it was a number of years ago. I was at Revive, and I was sitting out in the foyer talking to Brad Scott, Brad's wife, Carol. Of course, Brad of blessed memory. And Carol looked at me and said, out of the blue, "So what do you think we need in this movement today?" And I said, without thinking, I said, discernment. That's true today, and I believe it was true then. What do we see? At every place in these people's lives, whether it be Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and we could go on and move on from here into other places in the scripture with the Hebrews looking for a king, all of these things. But every person will be brought to a place of discernment, of needing discernment over a person in their lives. For Abraham, it was Lot. For Isaac, it was Esau. For Jacob, it will be Laban. Don't think you're going to get through life without having to need, desire, seek after. Not everybody that you meet is who they say they are. Not every situation in life is what it seems. And we need to be a people today of discernment. We know the story of Jacob, of Esau. Jacob has gotten a bad rap by Constantinian Christianity. He he bought the birthright. Okay, he did not steal it. He bought it. And so when he walks into the tent and says, I'm Esau, he is walking in the footsteps of the firstborn because he is purchased. So the blame here should not be placed upon Jacob, but the blame should be placed upon Isaac for a lack of discernment over who is going to walk in that covenant. Now, he is told, Esau walks in, says, "Isn't there a blessing for me?" There's only one covenant. There's only one blessing of the covenant. There's not two firstborns. There's only one. Esau had a decision. He could have submitted himself and received great blessing, I believe, if he had submitted himself to his brother and said, I was wrong, which a person with Esau's disposition, I was wrong, is something that just doesn't come out of their mouths at all. Not very easily, not at all, okay? So he could have, but he didn't. And because of that, we see that Esau wept aloud, and Esau wept aloud. Esau, his father, answered him, "Here, your home will be of the riches of the earth and the dew of the heaven from above." There are those that translate this as that your dew will be away from the riches of Eretz and away from the dew of heaven from above, speaking specifically that your home will be away from the riches and dew of the land of Eretz Israel, that you will not be a partaker in the riches and wealth of Eretz Israel, but he was given other, we understand he was given other blessings. And then this verse, you will live by the sword, you will serve your brother, but when you break loose, you will shake his yoke off your neck. That is, I believe that's been mistranslated, that it's not that Jacob's has a yoke of bondage over Esau's neck, around Esau's neck, but that Esau has placed a yoke of bondage upon himself because he refuses to submit to his brother. All right. Now, this brings forth a hatred between these boys. And I don't know that we today understand the hatred that is. The hatred that, and I'm turning actually to Isaiah chapter 14, if you'd like to get over there as I'm talking. When we talk about this idea of the covenant is originating in the spiritual realm, not in the physical realm. That which is the fight over the covenant, it is a spiritual covenant that's being fought out in a physical arena. We must understand, as Shaul did, that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. Okay? That which is going on in the physical is just the manifestation of that which is going on in the spiritual. There is a hatred, and that hatred begins in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. How do you come to fall from heaven's morning star, son of the dawn? How do you come to be cut to the ground, conqueror of nations? You thought to yourself, I will scale the heavens. I will raise my throne above Elohim's stars. I will sit on the mount of assembly, far away in the north. I will pass the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. This is one of the prophecies regarding Hasatan, or Lucifer. There is no way in earthly terms to understand the hatred that Satan has for Elohim, for the covenant, and for those of the covenant. Suffice it to say that we live not in a playground, but in a battleground. And the moment that we decide that this is, why is life hard? Okay? Why isn't life easy? Because life is a battleground, and it is about the battle of the covenant being established, and you and I are the ones that are in the midst of it. Lastly, in chapter 28, Isaac called Yaakov and blessed him and charged him and said, go and possess the land. But he says in verse 3, may El Shaddai bless you, make you fruitful, and increase your descendants until they become a whole assembly of people. He says, he brings in this word, this term, this name El Shaddai, going back to the possibility that when Abraham came up over that hillside where the Has Promenade is, Abraham may have shown him the sheen, which is about the name El Shaddai. And so he passes on this concept of El Shaddai, or the sheen, it goes from Abraham to Isaac and then to Yaakov. And we'll go through and we'll read about Esau teaming up with Ishmael. That's going to work out real good, huh? Okay. Shabbat Shalom. Shavua Tov. Have a blessed, prosperous week. Bezrat Hashem. God willing, see you again next week. And until then, be strong for the sake of the covenant.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai v'lecha v'yasem lecha shalom.